So we're coming to you live from the EV Reality Check stage, powered by Green Cars. Our conversation for this top of the hour is with Paul DiBenedetto from PSEG, your favorite Long Island electricity utility, if I have that correct.
That's correct.
So tell me, Paul, what do you do there?
So I'm the electric vehicle program manager for PSEG Long Island. I've been there for 9 years, so.
And are you... and you're responsible for EVs specifically?
Yes, so we manage everything from residential, commercial, and fleet. We help support EV adoption here on Long Island.
Okay. So what I hear, being in the EV industry, you hear from a lot of EV skeptics, and clearly one of the top things EV skeptics tell us is that the grid can't really support EVs. I mean, that's been going on for a while, that if everybody plugs their EVs in, the whole grid will collapse. And I guess to some extent that's been debunked, or largely, but I'll hear you on that. But can you also throw in now, everybody's also talking about data centers and AI and how that makes it even harder now for EVs to stand on their own when it comes to powering up?
Yeah, I mean, everyone had their concerns when central air was being introduced and air conditioning, and everyone had the same concern, is that the grid was going to, fail, we weren't going to be able to support it. But, what happens is that naturally, over years, more and more people start to add central air, or in this case, electric vehicles, and, we as a utility and many other utilities, they plan for these type of things. So we do forecasting every year. We predict how many electric vehicles are going to be on the road, and we, make sure that our grid is going to be able to support that. So we've been investing over $500 million over the past few years just to reinforce the grid, make upgrades, and just, accommodate all this future beneficial electrification that's happening.
How accurate are your projections? Because it feels like we live in a kind of turbulent world where, governments change, regulations change, priorities change. So how complicated does that make the kind of looking forward part of your role? Yeah,
no, listen, we do this every year. Every year we do forecasting, whether it's for electric vehicles, solar, energy efficiency, heat pumps. So, we always get to reevaluate ourselves every year. There's always new assumptions. Now that federal tax credit's gone away, does that slow down EV adoption? Maybe, but there's also a lot of affordable options that are out there. So I think that, the next few years are going to be very interesting to see what adoption rates look like, but we are, evaluating this every year to make sure that we're getting the right amount of power to, keep the lights on.
Right. And just out of interest, so in Long Island, so you cover Long Island, not Brooklyn.
From Far Rockaway to Montauk.
From Far Rockaway, so a little bit of Queens.
Yep.
Okay. And, how would you describe sort of EV adoption across Long Island specifically?
Yeah, no, it's been great. We have over 84,000 EVs on the road here on Long Island. We actually lead the state currently in EV adoption. And I would say, it makes sense. There's a lot of single-family homes here on Long Island, but even a lot of multifamily units, they're getting more and more EVs because through our EV Make Ready program, we're providing incentives to put in EV chargers at multifamily, workplace, public charging spaces. So, it's been really healthy EV adoption.
And why are you providing those incentives? Is it to get more business, get people to buy more electricity from you? Is that your motivation?
Yes and no. We want to promote EV adoption overall because it helps help with the Climate Act goals of New York State. So there's a lot of initiatives to add more renewables, more beneficial electrification, and more electric vehicles. But through the EV Make Ready program, we offer incentives for the infrastructure itself to power up a level 2 or a DC fast charger.
And so in terms of the specific programs, so if I own a home, I can do my own charging at home. So let's get granular. How would you help me sort of maximize the utility of my EV and minimize the costs of owning one?
Yeah, so today we offer a rebate for a level 2 charger. So customers can get up to $300 for the purchase of an Energy Star rated level 2 charger. With our time of day rates that have been rolling out to our residential customers, they're able to program and charge their EV to charge in the off-peak hours, which gives them the most savings. So that's been really great. And we've started to roll out some demand response programs for our EV customers. So just this summer alone, we had customers from Ford and BMW enroll in a demand response program where they were able to shift their EV charging to the off-peak hours, and they got compensated for it. As a utility, though, we are exploring to get to the next level of active managed charging, which is where we'll be able to enable customers to not only get their charge in by the next morning, but also get compensated for that.
Right. So just to drill down on that a little bit, so I've seen so one of my colleagues who lives in Illinois, for example, I think he signed up to some program there where he is showing me a sort of a variable cost of electricity through the day that he's getting from his local utility, and then he has, because he's a complete geek, but he's kind of set up his whole sort of charging system and everything so that, only once the price of electricity hits a certain threshold, in that minute he'll start charging, and then he'll turn it off when it gets more expensive than he wants to pay. Is that something that you guys can offer? And how practical is that kind of level of sophistication for your average consumer?
Yeah, so the way an electric utility works, when customers are getting up in the morning, you start to use a little bit more electricity, and people go to work, and then start to use more appliances. They start to go home. Now they're using the kitchen and other things. And as you throughout the day, there are fluctuations in terms of demand. Our peak demand is between 3 and 7 p.m. And so what we're trying to do is through customer behavior, or in the future more active, we want to shift a lot of that EV charging or other appliances that can be done overnight to go into those off-peak periods where it's cheapest to purchase electricity. And so that's how we offer those discounts. What a lot of companies are doing, or what a lot of utilities are exploring, is this active managed charging where, if EV customers enroll, they can get paid on a monthly basis. They'll say, I need this state of charge by the next morning. We'll program it so that, it's leveling out. It's not this secondary peak that everyone is going to be encountering. And it allows us to maintain grid reliability, offer discounted rates for our customers. So we're really excited to be doing that in the future.
Excellent. And so, do you think in terms of what people pay now, what's happened with electricity prices recently? Have they been going up?
Yeah, a lot of, especially since past COVID, a lot of utilities have seen some prices go up. So, we've been very cognizant of that and trying to make sure that we are aware of, how much rates go up each year. So it's been about 2 to 3%, I believe.
Right. And so, by kind of smoothing it out and sort of better matching people's demand to periods of low demand across the utility area, then you're able to help people moderate those costs.
Yeah, and that's a way for, with time of day, that's a way for customers to be able to better manage how they, use their electricity. With our traditional flat rates, it didn't matter what time you use electricity, it was the same price. But with the ability to, use these flexible hours, it allows you to say, I really don't need to charge my EV from 3 to 7 p.m. I can do it at night. I'm going to be asleep already, and by the next morning, as long as that car is fully charged, why does it matter?
Right. So does that mean then that if I'm signed up to this program, for example, that there's some software somewhere determining basically when it allows power to my EV charger and when it cuts that power off?
Yeah, at the most basic level, EVs already have the software in place in the vehicle. You can do it through your mobile app. EV chargers as well have that. So it's really as simple as program it once and you can forget about it. You don't have to do anything. Your EV is smart enough that it knows when to charge based off the hours that you say. But even with those programs I was talking about, there will be a point in time where, there is software in place that kind of manages it all for you. You don't have to do anything.
And does that require you to, you mentioned you're working with BMW and Ford?
Yep.
So, what is the level of, how closely do you need to work with these OEMs in order to make this thing a reality?
So for that program, what we do is we notify our aggregators that, hey, it's the hottest day of the year. We're trying to curtail load to off-peak periods. So things like smart thermostats, electric vehicles, those aggregators will say, okay, these customers will manage their loads for you, and it's all handled by third parties.
And sorry to clarify, what's an aggregator in this context?
Sorry, an aggregator is, basically a business that's able to manage a whole bunch of different customers. Say, hey, if you sign up, we'll give you an incentive. Let us control your thermostat or your electric vehicle. You don't have to do anything, and we'll work with the utility on your behalf.
Right, and that's generally soft. So that's it all in the background, or do you install a box from the aggregator?
Nope, all done in the background.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Right. So where do you see this going in terms of, I mean, are there going to be demands on the grid overall? I mean, should we, as just in general, or maybe just as New Yorkers, should we be concerned? In the mayoral debate they had a few days ago for the city, one of the criticisms that I heard about Governor Cuomo is that he closed down, I can't remember which nuclear plant it was, but then that, you know, and the effect of that was that it's driven up electricity prices across the whole state because we don't have enough capacity in New York, and it's all Cuomo's fault. And that was a political discussion. But should we be worried as residents of New York about this kind of thing?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said before, we're doing forecasting every year to make sure that there's enough reliable power. But, you know, there's over 100,000 solar rooftop systems, so almost 1 in 8 or 1 in 10 residential customers have solar on their roof. There's more and more customers installing battery storage systems to keep the lights on even, you know, during a power outage. But then we just launched our first offshore wind farm off the coast of Montauk, 132 megawatts, and that powers over 70,000 homes. And that's going to continue to climb.
Did you say that's a wave farm or a wind farm?
A wind farm.
A wind farm, but offshore?
Yes.
So I'd heard wind farms, this is clearly not my area of expertise, but my understanding was, certainly under the current administration, wind farms are like not popular.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, you know, over time we'll see. I mean, what's great about where we are located is that we have an abundance of offshore and, you know, being able to utilize wind farms to power up our homes. It's, you know, we're talking thousands of megawatts of power that could be clean, reliable power for our customers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, you don't need to convince me. I come from Europe and, you know, they're bigger there. But, I mean, are we going to see more wind farms, or are they kind of going to be on pause now for a few years, do you think?
I think we're going to see more over time. The South Fork wind farm, there's a lot of efforts in New York State to, you know, have more offshore wind in the coming years. So, you know, time will tell.
And roughly what percentage of the electricity you supply to consumers, to households, is from renewable sources as opposed to fossil fuels? It's
not as high right now, but it is growing. So it's more in the single digits. I think the last I had looked, it was around 4 or 5% of total generation was just from renewables. But that's only going to grow. You know, there's also things that are not renewable that do generate electricity, like nuclear, biomass, things like that, that do supply the grid, but it's just not considered renewable energy.
Right, but they're not polluting in the same way.
Right.
Unless you have a meltdown, but that's hopefully that won't happen anymore. So how are we doing for time? Yeah, no, we're good. So is that, if you could, you know, you have a microphone in front of you, what do you think are like the biggest kind of misconceptions that an average resident of Long Island might have about owning an EV and the kind of the hassle of doing that from a, you know, recharging point of view?
Yeah, I mean, you know, electric vehicles are definitely, you know, what we've seen is that they are very cost beneficial compared to gas vehicles. Even with the rates that we have, you know, I know a lot of people compare, you know, our utility to maybe another utility out west, but, you know, with the time of day rates, it definitely makes it that much more cost beneficial. But even the grid itself, I know a lot of people will ask, well, if you have an electric vehicle but it's being powered by, you know, a fossil fuel plant, is that actually green versus a gas car? But you got to think about it almost in economies of scale. You know, power plants, think of it almost like a big factory. Things are much more efficient. You can create more widgets more efficient than, say, a small shop.
Right.
The same concept applies with power plants. You know, they're maybe between 40 and 60% efficient, whereas with gas cars, they could be about 20% efficient. So what that means is that for the amount of fuel you put in your gas car, 20% of that will be used to move the vehicle, power up your devices in there. The rest of it is going out the exhaust. With power plants, because you have that economy of scale, that 40 to 60% efficiency, you know, that can be used not just to power up your electric vehicle, but keep the lights on at your house and run businesses. So there's definitely a much more, and beyond that, it's just the fact that the grid is only getting more green. There's more renewables coming online every day, and so the grid is only getting that much more efficient.
Right. So the fossil fuel goes further in a electricity generating plant than it does in a car.
Exactly.
Right. And then the efficiency of getting that through the cabling and through the transmission lines to your charger and into the car. I mean, another myth, well, I don't know if it's a myth, but the idea is, just there's an inherent inefficiency, right, in transmitting electricity. And so, but that doesn't sort of eradicate the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, there's resistance in everything. Wires only have, there's heat losses, there's, resistance in metals. So, even after accounting for the line losses, it's still that much more efficient to deliver electricity to your home to power up your EV or a public charging station.
Okay. So you guys have a booth here?
Yes, we do. Yep, booth 409.
And what would you like? Who are you looking to come to your booth and ask you questions, and what can you tell them?
Yeah, any customers. If you're interested in an electric vehicle, if you have questions about how will that impact my bill, if you have a business and you're looking to put in a public charging station or put in a charging station for your employees, we can answer all those questions.
So I have one final question for you. We hear a lot about V2G, vehicle to grid, and in theory you kind of get it. And I think more than the average person about EVs, and yet every time I'm thinking about V2G, and I understand it's a way of being able to feed electricity back into the grid. So the kind of times you were talking about, peak times, you might be able to draw from other sources and sort of be able to spread the demand out. But all the time I'm thinking, but if I've got a car, then I'm like just draining my battery to help the grid. So where am I going wrong in that? Am I just being horrendously selfish?
No, the energy has to come from somewhere. So if you're going to discharge the battery from the vehicle to power up your home or send it back to the grid, it is going to use electricity. But there are ways to program it. I think some vehicles like that Ford F-150 Lightning that's over here, it has the ability to kind of program it like, okay, it won't go below a certain threshold. What's actually really interesting is that as a utility, it's still in the relatively new space in terms of more and more customers are starting to get those features in their vehicles. And so, we're working on ways to have customers send power reliably back to the grid or power up their home. Even school buses, believe it or not, are actually having vehicle-to-grid capability where they'll get compensated in the summer when the buses might not be used as much.
Right.
They can, basically a big battery that they can then discharge to the grid and get compensated.
Right. And there is no risk if I sign my theoretical vehicle up to a V2G program that, I'll do that and it's great for the grid and maybe I'll get some credit back for doing that. But if I need to jump in my car and go somewhere like now, that it's not just going to be an empty battery.
Yeah, no, I mean, even with our demand response programs, like you have the ability to override. So like if you say, listen, I know I'll get paid if I can curtail my charging, but like I need to go somewhere. You can override those things and
And so does PSEG see this as a big opportunity in terms, or as something that's going to be interesting? Because I imagine it can only make sense for you guys at scale, right? If about 3 people are doing it, I know you have to start somewhere, but that's zero impact to you as a grid. So, do you see there's going to be enough scale in this, in enough people wanting to participate in this, that the aggregate of all of those batteries really has an impact on your overall network?
Yeah, no, I definitely see a lot of interest from customers. I hear a lot of people that want to do vehicle to grid. They have the latest technology. They want to test it out, and we're excited for that. I think what's amazing about this time is this space is that there's so many of these distributed energy resources that can enable them to participate in the grid, help the grid out, save money on their electric bill. There's so many different ways than what there used to be years ago. It was only just solar back then, but now there's so much more. So
great. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
If you want to learn more about our electric vehicle programs, visit psegling.com/EV.
And once again, we're coming to you from the EV Reality Check stage, powered by Green Cars.